Wanted to give a quick warning that this video is going to have some pretty significant spoilers for not only the entire live-action Avatar Netflix series, but a bit of the cartoon as well. So proceed with caution if you're looking to avoid that stuff. Although I never really made content on it before until now, I was always a pretty big fan of the Avatar series, specifically The Last Airbender. It was one of those shows that felt kind of surreal to watch on a channel like Nickelodeon as a kid of all places, because serialized shows with more serious themes and undertones like Avatar were typically put on Cartoon Network or Adult Swim for more mature audiences. Of course there were exceptions, like Danny Phantom or even As Told by Ginger, but The Last Airbender still felt a cut above the rest in these aspects for the usual Nickelodeon standards and brand. So when it was announced that The Last Airbender was going to be getting a Netflix adaptation in 2024, I tried to keep as best of an open mind as I could and not try to dismiss it completely before actually seeing anything. Which was a bit hard in ways because, let's face it, live action adaptations of animated properties have never really had the best reputations in the world. Shyamalan's Airbender movie, the Cowboy Bebop live action Death Note, the Dragon Ball movie. Oh look, it's Fiona and Jimmy from Shameless. Nice. All these projects were received extremely poorly from both critics and general audiences. It got to a point where some people just didn't understand why these adaptations were even being made, because the likelihood of them being bad just felt higher than the likelihood of it being good because of the previous track records of the other ones. And as more information was revealed about this Netflix version, the harder it became for me to not worry about how it will turn out. Hearing things like the original Avatar creators Michael DiMartino and Brian Konietzko walked away from the project after 2 years because of the lack of control they had with the direction of the series, this is still the biggest red flag, followed by hearing things about Sokka's character not being as misogynistic in this adaptation. This was something I was so surprised to hear discourse around and people defending it, because him being this way was crucial to his character growth and learning to respect female fighters more. But even with all this on the table, I still wanted to give it a chance. And after finishing it all within a 2 to 3 day time span, the best words I can describe it is, it's just kind of boring, honestly. This sentiment mostly stems from lack of actions being done with these characters and the writing just throwing a bunch of exposition in your face. And me personally, I believe actions speak louder than words, especially when it comes to learning about a character's core personality traits and interests. Plus, it's just a better way to, feel like you're respecting your audience's intelligence so you don't have to just describe everything. The Netflix series did a very poor job with this, especially with Aang. This specific scene, I'm sure, has been mentioned a lot by other creators online at this point, but the whole scene Aang had with Appa when he was trying to deal with the fact that he's going to be Avatar now, the guy basically looks right at the camera and tells us what he likes and what his personality is.
I like to play airball and eat banana cakes and goof off with my friends. That's who I am.
The fact that none of this was shown, it's just so odd to me. Actually showing Aang dicking around with other airbenders in his temple the same way it was shown in the cartoon would have felt not only more impactful, but simply more enjoyable to watch than having the character just say it to the audience in the most direct way possible. Honestly, dude, it damn near felt like a fourth wall break with how that scene went down. Hi, my name's Aang, I'm 5'2", blood type O negative, and I love playing airball with my friends. And this is just scratching the surface. The entire first episode is just big lore dumps one after another. And to circle back to Sokka a bit, as much as I wanted to enjoy his character here because he was one of my personal favorites in the cartoon, he just didn't hit the same for me. The no sexism thing was a big one, but his overconfidence from having to take on the leadership role of the Southern Water Tribe at a young age despite having very little battling experience was what made his journey in the cartoon a lot better, because now he's traveling with Avatar Aang by his side and, he's on this big journey to save the world. He's constantly being sunned by bigger and stronger characters, which not only makes for funny moments, but humbling ones too. And this live action version of Sokka almost felt too capable, already having pretty good fighting skills, where the conflict with his character lied in a lack of self-confidence despite already being established as a pretty good fighter, because even when he became the leader of the village, his dad still didn't really trust him, which on paper isn't an inherently bad change. This is an adaptation after all, so not every character needs to be exactly the same, but Sokka's overconfidence and lack of respect for female fighters was such a massive part to his character in the original, so changing something that big and replacing it with something else that's kind of entirely the opposite version, coupled with, the not so great execution, that leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. And said bad execution mostly stemming from how he and Suki's relationship was handled in the live action. Their interactions felt super bare bones, with Suki just developing a crush on Sokka for no reason. The substance just wasn't there for me. Katara's character fell into similar issues. The live action version of her felt way too calm in a sense. The cartoon version of her was a lot more passionate, confident, no nonsense, not afraid to voice her opinion and get loud. Her interactions with Sokka in particular would highlight this the best in book 1. The new version of her, on the other hand, does still occasionally get into it with Sokka, but it's just not at the same level due to what the writers are choosing to make her say, combined with Sokka's sexism not being a thing anymore playing a factor. To give this adaptation some credit on a positive note, I think the way Prince Zuko and Ozai were handled relatively well here. They were able to capture Zuko's angry and immature nature quite well while he still struggles to figure out what he wants to truly do in the world. Ozai's totalitarian view on the world and showing any kind of respect to a potential enemy as a sign of weakness, good stuff. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like Ozai didn't need to have this much of a notable role for the first season. Like, having the scene of him burning Zuko's eye could have been kept in because that's such a major event that shaped him into the person he is, and it worked well within the episode it was shown in. Then you have Ozai emotionally manipulating Azula by giving credit to her brother catching the Avatar, despite also helping General Zhao out during the season to get in Zuko's way more, further pushing Azula to her limits within her fighting training. However, these scenes, especially the ones with him and Azula, could have been saved for later in my opinion. Like, Mei and Ty Lee being in this season felt super unnecessary. No hate to the actors or the original versions of the characters, but it felt like they hardly added anything to the scenes they ended up being in. And the bending looked pretty good. Like, I think firebending probably looked the best, and then airbending, I feel like that's one that's kind of hard to screw up. In water and earth, it was hit or miss. One thing I am worried about for a potential second season is the idea they'll try to redeem Azula because of the way Ozai was training her in season 1, which, if that ends up being a thing, that would be the worst possible thing. Please don't do it. But her solely being saved for like a post-credit scene, capturing Boomy and nothing else would have been alright in my book. Could have given more time to, properly flesh out the core main characters with some actions instead of exposition city. There's only so much we can blame on this being an 8-episode order that's meant to cover all the contents of Book 1 Water. I was made aware that apparently the live-action version is only 70 or so minutes shorter than the first season of the cartoon, which equates to about 3 episodes less of the cartoon. That's not that much considering how long the Netflix episodes were. They totally could have managed the time better within the show's universe to not make it feel so bloated and sloppy in certain areas. Despite only covering some of my issues with this adaptation, it wasn't my intention to really do a full-fledged review for this video, but rather use some of the show's shortcomings to further relay a problem, but also sort of a praise for this adaptation existing. Because the thing about this show existing now is, it will more than likely get more eyes on the original series than it had before. I'm not sure if this was the case with Cowboy Bebop or not, but to use the live-action One Piece as an example, the success of that adaptation got a lot more people into the original One Piece than before. Which, when looking at it at a base level, is a good thing. Like, oh cool, more people are giving the original source material a chance now because of this live action. The big saving grace for this adaptation being a thing is the hope more people who never saw the cartoon before will now go out of their way to watch it out of curiosity, with the Netflix version catching their attention enough to want to see these characters more. But even then, I feel like I might be giving this situation more benefit of the doubt than it deserves, because it's still an adaptation in my eyes that wasn't able to reach the same heights as the original in almost every way. To bring up One Piece again, perhaps part of the reason so many people began to become more intrigued with taking their One Piece experience further than the live action was because of how well the first season was executed. They took a set of arcs, aka the East Blue Saga, which is typically viewed as one of the weaker sagas in One Piece, and arguably made it even more enjoyable than the original manga's take on it. Small changes like Arlong coming to the Baratie and Sanji being less of a horny freak were very welcome changes. The Sanji one especially, because I know a lot of One Piece fans consider Sanji their least favorite Straw Hat solely because of how he can act like a degenerate around women. Now in the live action, he's just a simple flirt. Of course, having Oda himself work so closely with a crew of One Piece super nerds helped a ton, but then that just circles back to the OG Avatar creators not being involved at all. It just goes to show that if the original source material is already really good and the people behind original said source material aren't vibing with the new adaptation, high chance for said new adaptation to not turn out that great. As of recording this video, the Netflix version debuted with 21.2 million views over the course of the first 4 days, which is apparently a 15% increase from One Piece's premiere. So season 2 is inevitable at this point. It just sucks how these live action adaptations are what get people to suddenly care about the cartoon version. Of course, that's not the case for everybody. I'm sure there's a chunk of folks out there that never heard of Avatar before this and learned about the cartoon after watching the Netflix version, or there's people like me who are just watching it out of curiosity. But that other group still being a thing is just unfortunate to me because it just continues to inadvertently push the agenda of animation not being taken as seriously as a medium as a live action version, despite the animation version being better in 95% of the contents, in my opinion. One Piece was the same way. All of a sudden, people started reading the manga / watching the anime only after they watched the live action. It just, why does that have to be the straw that breaks the camel's back to get people to try out animated source material? I know it might feel like I'm blaming the viewers or consumers entirely for these adaptations being a thing, but that's far from the truth. Of course, there is some blame to a degree on that front, but the networks and streaming services like Netflix, which have shown time and time again over recent years that they don't take animation seriously as a medium, that's also a major issue. Shows like Inside Job being canceled for essentially no reason. Then you got the whole tax write-off situation over at Warner with Coyote vs. Acme just being put in the safe for where those scumbags are making it their mission to make sure the general public can never view the finished product. It's just kind of disgusting the lack of care these guys show in such an obvious way. They really don't even try to hide it. Thankfully, the original cartoon is also available on Netflix right now, so the convenience factor for those who want to start or go back to the cartoon again after watching the live action, it's super easy. If I had to give this version of The Last Airbender an overall rating, it would probably be a 6 out of 10 at best, maybe 5.5 on a bad day. Usually I try to be as open-minded as possible going into new shows, adaptations, what have you, and give things as much benefit of the doubt as possible, but there's only so much I can defend here with this adaptation. If you haven't watched it yet, then I don't want this video to discourage you from doing so. You should come to your own conclusions on how you feel about it, and not just assume every take I have on it will be the same. Or if you just don't feel like watching it at all, that's totally fine too. Like, if you're someone who not only enjoyed the original, but also understood what kind of themes and messages it was trying to convey within its characters and universe as a whole, then the likelihood you'll get more or even the same amount out of the live action as you did the original is very low in my opinion. For those who did watch it already, I'd love to know what kind of takes you have on it, what you did enjoy, not enjoy, and if anything differs from what I presented in this video. I would be very curious to know your thoughts on everything. I'm sure there's another group of viewers out there who check this out because they have vague memories of the cartoon growing up and are giving it a chance to revisit the world in a more casual way and not be very bothered by its issues, which is also totally fair. Of course, if you did enjoy this video overall, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe for more content like this in the future. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye.